A Taste of the Nabatean Agriculture. Introduction. I, Ibn Waḥshīyya, found that this book of agriculture is attributed to three ancient Chaldean sages. They say that one of them began it, the second added other things to it, and the third made it complete. The book was written in ancient Syriac, and it comprised of some 1,500 double pages. Concerning the one who began this, it is said that he was a man who appeared in the 7th millennium of the 7,000 years of the rule of Saturn. That is, the millennium in which Saturn was in partnership with the moon. His name was Sagrit. He who added other things to that was a man who appeared in the end of these millennia, and his name was Yanbushad. And the third, who made it complete, was a man who appeared after 4,000 years had elapsed from the cycle of the sun in this cycle. I mean, the cycle which belongs to Saturn, that is, the 1,000 years in which the two earlier men had appeared. I counted the interval between the two times, and it came out to be 21,000 years. The name of this third man was Kutama. He said that he appeared after 4,000 years had elapsed from the cycle of the sun, which lasts for 7,000 years, so between them there was the period I have mentioned. Both of the two who added to what the first, Sagrit, had composed, added in their books something to every chapter which Sagrit had written, but they changed nothing from what he had said and written and spoken, nor did they alter the order in which he presented his material. They merely added to everything that he had put down according to what they had found and invented after him. On Sages. The respective event below is the abundance of the intelligent animals, and that some among them attain their ultimate limit of knowledge and intellect, and all these ultimate limits are combined in one person among them, and he is like the God of gods, the sage of sages, and the wise among the wise. He is the one who teaches the people of the earth what they do not know except through him, and which they do not understand except because of him. Such was Adam, the messenger of the moon, and before him Dawanai, the Lord of all mankind. Adam was called the father of mankind, and Dawanai was called the Lord of mankind. This you must understand concerning these three gods, Jupiter, Mercury, and the moon. You must know that looking at these persons who have this special temperament causes joy, and from them spreads mirth to all their time, and strength to the souls and to the hearts, and clarity to eyesight, and power to faculties. They are like the gods, the possessors of light, in whose light people delight to be illumined, and by whom they are guided in darkness. Every one of these persons is called in his time the clarifier and the eraser, and they are called the praiseworthy offspring, coming after the confused ancestors, or the straight offspring after the crooked ancestors. The mercy of the gods towards mankind is this, that after the gradual obliteration of the causes of religious knowledge, they renew for them the things that profit them. There is, namely, in human nature an inclination toward crookedness, and the following of the passions by confusing bad things with good ones, and through this they run towards corruption. This kind of action is more firmly rooted in them than the opposite, righteousness. This is caused by the action of the two nefarious ones, Saturn and Mars, because mankind lives specifically in the world of the two nefarious ones, Earth and water belong to the two nefarious ones, whereas air and fire escape from earth and water and ascend because the direction of the two movements of these two elements, air and fire, is the opposite of the movement of earth and water. Mankind, together with all the other animals and plants and minerals, are the sons of earth and water, whereas air and fire merely enter them. And because of this, they incline more towards that which is more firmly rooted in them. What is dominant in them holds dominion over them, and they yield to those actions which are dominant in their original composition, and which is the beginning of their generation. Because they yield to that and incline towards it, being dominant in them, they easily become crooked, and they follow the movement of the crooked soul, which is the movement of corruption. This first corruption is followed by a second, third, fourth, etc., until the seventh corruption, 7 being the number of the people of righteousness. Several corruptions are thus laid one above the other, and when the number 7 is completed, it will then continue endlessly. In mankind, this becomes like a disease which needs a cure, acting against the natural inclination and strengthening bodies so that they may recover health. Their gaining strength and returning to well-being derives from these people who come periodically and who are aided by the gods, as we have described. They are like the stars with which one is guided in darkness, whose brightness makes the terror of the fearful vanish. The best of their contemporaries understand them, yet not all of their listeners do understand them, and not all those who see them grasp the essence of their message. They are like springs, whose waters become a great and mighty river, irrigating different kinds of fields, and plants and trees, both great and small. All these receive the same water, yet their colors and tastes and odors and effects differ from each other, and this difference is followed by a difference in their effects. So it is also with people who are born in their time. I mean, the time of these men. People receive from them the same help, that is, their words, but they differ in several ways in their capacity to understand them. Each of them carries, that is, understands and keeps in memory something of what has been said. The states of the followers of these sages are understood by learned sages who know their states, and those of each of their, that is, the original sages, followers, and their capacity to understand, and their potential to conceptualize, and how they drink from the water of these wise men, just like plants drink. This is the state of those who see the sages, that is, their generation. Such is also the state of the generation which follows the first followers and companions and the succeeding generations until we come to the 7th generation. This is the end of correctness and the ultimate limit of rightness. Philosophers versus prophets. The ancients have spoken on this and similar things in 2 ways, because those who spoke about these things were either philosophers or prophets. The words of the philosophers are completely exoteric and clear, without any esoteric dimensions, and they should not be interpreted otherwise than in their obvious sense. The words of the prophets, on the other hand, are mixed in their meanings and arguments with things and meanings of an instructional aim. Now, when instruction is mixed with demonstration, these result in words whose inner meaning may differ from their outer meaning. Each listener takes from this exterior meaning according to the scope of his reason and discrimination. For this reason, those who have taken their knowledge from the prophets disagree with each other. Those who hand down the words of the prophets should be most intelligent and discerning, so that they would understand what they are dealing with, and would know how to hand it down. This is why it behooves every intelligent person to hand down the words of the prophet exactly in the way he uttered them, without additions or omissions, so that the meaning would not change and become reversed due to additions or omissions. The words of the philosophers need none of this exactitude in transmission because they do not contain any confusion at all. However, one does not call this mixedness caused by instructional aims in the words of the prophets confusion because they are safe from any real confusion. This is why the words of Adam, the father of mankind, and Dawanai before him, who was called the Lord of mankind, as well as the prophets Anua, Aknucha, and Seth, the son of Adam, and other prophets like them, are such that the one who listens to them must ponder on them, and do this best to comprehend them in order to benefit from them. But this will not come out right if one is not good in conceptualizing their meaning, because they are wisdom mingled with instruction, aimed at each and all, among them both intelligent people, although these are extremely few, as well as stupid ones, sound ones as well as lunatics, slow ones as well as rapid ones, and between each pair there are further intermediate states. If one wishes to instruct people like these, one must mix his words with instruction, flattering, correction for those who need correcting, and threatening for those who need it. If one wishes to guide all people, one must think of these meanings, conceptualize them, and make use of them. The following spoke without observing instructional aims. Yardaya and Tamithra, the Canaanites, Masa Asurani, and Kamash an-Nahri, the ancient, who lived so long ago that we do not know how long a time has passed from him until our time. Among the Chaldeans, he is believed to be more ancient than the Lord of mankind, Dawanai, and more ancient than any of those who we have mentioned. About him we have no information or stories except for this book, titled Shayashik, in which he spoke of three things, one of them agriculture and the cultivation of plants. Their words are to be understood according to their exterior, and their meaning is obvious to the reader. They are without any esoteric meanings, nor do they have any need to be interpreted like the words of the prophets. The proof of this is what Adam, peace be upon him, has said, namely that gnats are generated because of the acts of wantonness committed by mankind, be they many or grave, and that scorpions and lizards become numerous if people commit much injustice among themselves. Snakes and vipers are generated when people do too much killing. When they freely kill each other, many snakes and vipers are generated among them. Many fleas, ticks, bedbugs, termites, and lice are generated from the multitudes of sins committed by the people toward each other or toward the gods. Different countries and climes generate different things because of the deeds typical to the people of that clime. If they sin, harmful and obnoxious vermin are generated for them and among them as a way of punishing them. All these sins are caused by following lusts and turning towards them and following them instead of turning towards reason and following it. If I went on to speak about how the prophets have preached and rebuked people for their deeds, that would take a long time, even if I merely narrated the words of only one of them. This was a passage from the words of Adam only. His son Seth has spoken about this and about these meanings, even more than his father Adam. And again, others have spoken yet more extensively than Seth. But this is not our aim here. The prophets, as we have said, are unanimous in saying that everything that damages men, such as vermin and poisonous reptiles, is generated by the action of the stars, not in order to deliberately injure them, but as punishments issuing from themselves to themselves of the sins they have done, as well as from their doing evil to each other, or to themselves, and their turning away from reason towards lust. Vermin and poisonous reptiles, either lethal or sickening, are generated when someone commits a sinful deed, or someone else sees this taking place without rebuking the sinner for his misdeed, or fighting against them, or trying to deflect that misdeed. If, on the other hand, someone rebukes the sinner for doing such damage to his own kind, and prevents him from doing that deed, then the poisonous and other vermin will be obliterated. Also, if all people were just to each other, and no one would do injustice to anyone, their troubles would fade away, and their bodies would be healthy. They would not fall ill, but they would prosper. There would be no famine, and their crops would be sound. But, as they are unjust to each other, not just in their transactions, their evil causes all these afflictions of famine, poverty, and illness. Other obnoxious creeping animals are generated by people being unjust to each other, especially the strong being unjust to the poor whom they have in their power. Poisonous animals and others which cause damage without being poisonous come into being this way. Likewise, poisonous reptiles do not bite anyone except on account of some sin he has committed, which deserves this punishment. These animals are generated according to the number of misdeeds. The generation of snakes and vipers is not equal to the generation of flies, gnats, and bedbugs. This is the doctrine of those whom the Chaldeans called prophets. We too hold this to be true, because they think that there is in the world nothing harmful except to those who deserve it. Otherwise, the world is merely one substance which constantly does one thing, the ultimate good. The nefarious ones are also doing only good, and they have been called by this name, nefarious, because they arouse some natural things which have evil and harmful effects on us. So they are called nefarious in relation to us and how they affect us. This is why they are called so. The sages of the Canaanites and the Chaldeans say that all this is due to constant coincidences. Constant meaning something that does not change its course. Even if they do not leave their habit for a while, they will soon return to it. These coincidences are wonderful and curious, and I am not able to disclose all that I know about them, since explaining all this would mean corrupting the order of the education of the people by the prophets. This is why I do not say anything about this which would corrupt the general public. The mass of people, nay, most of them in general, do not agree with this, nor would they recognize the constant coincidences which do not change their course, even if one explained this many times to them. Now, as this is so, it is better for us to abstain from more explanation. It is better to show the way of the instruction of the prophets to the people and to teach it, because that will benefit all people, and wisdom is found in giving benefit to all instead of only some, especially when these people are a minority. So, we will stop speaking of these two things, that is, the words of the prophets and the philosophers who believe in these coincidences, and we will come back again to speaking about vines. Our excursion has become too long, and it remains for us to finish what we were speaking about, that is, agriculture. On talismans. One may produce a property in something which did not have it, or dispel something from something which did have it, which is merely another way of putting the same thing, the meaning of both expressions being the same or similar. In the second expression, there's a hint at something which was not in the first one. The basic rule in this and its cause is the action of things through their special properties. This is how talismans work, and what they mean. A talisman means giving dominance to a feature of some thing which has some other nature. The feature which has been empowered deletes the nature which the thing used to have through an action which is called the special property, and this produces something else in that entity. This action is a transformation which changes something and transfers its nature to something which it had not had before. We realize that this will not be understood except in this order and this gradation little by little. Thus it follows by necessity that a talisman is the same as a special property, and that a special property is a talisman. Yet every talisman possesses a special property, but not everything possessing a special property may be called a talisman. Likewise, every change is called transformation, but not every transformation may be called a talisman. Understand this difference between the two. A chapter which we designate the chapter of great benefit. It was necessary for us to investigate the cause and reason for plants to grow by themselves on the steppes and elsewhere. When our investigation led us here, we studied the manner in which this occurs, and when we came by it, we explained it. Now there emerges from this a great and most useful benefit, because it leads the one who knows it to the operation of generating fruit-bearing trees, the fruits of which are numerous, and to generating pot herbs and fragrant herbs and useful drugs as well as harmful and poisonous drugs. This chapter is more noble and useful than the chapter on the grafting of some trees on others, from which there comes various fruits strange and novel in their tastes, color, and odor. This is because when one really understands the manner of the growth of what grows by itself after rainfall, or close to, or in stagnant water, be they trees or others, he will understand through that how things are. And if he wants to generate some tree or other plant, he will be able to do so. If one lacks some common fruit-bearing tree, something similar may be produced through certain action, and one's reasoning may lead one to know its origin, so that one can even generate things that are neither common nor known. This is possible for people to do, not impossible, if they come to know that origin, because generation resembles the growth of things by themselves without anyone sowing or cultivating them. I will explain this. Rains and torrents may, and this happens often, carry with them seeds of plants, or their roots, or other parts to places where they remain, while the rain or the torrent feeds them, and there will grow from them trees and other plants growing by themselves. This is one of the two ways of growing by oneself. There is also another way, namely that plants grow out of nothing which the torrent would have carried with itself. This is the origin also for the first way of plants growing from some other part of the plant, which the torrent has carried with itself, because one might say, if a plant grows from a part of an earlier plant, and that plant comes from yet an earlier one, and this goes on infinitely, it will be absurd and repulsive and repugnant. Thus you must then by necessity say that the first of all will, when the succession ends, be an origin which grew by itself without anything at all preceding it. I will answer, this is correct because all existent things which come from like ones, growing from seeds preceding them, must end in an origin which came to be by itself without any seed, such that a thing is something which nature has done. Nature being the attractive faculty, through the mixing of the four primary qualities with a substance or a body which both mean the same. Here there is a point of disagreement. I mean, what to call that process? The primary qualities join with a substance which has no dimensions. That power which we call the nature of nature is the effective cause which causes spontaneous growth without an origin. It is what we have taken on ourselves to study and to explain its manner so that whoever wishes to generate a non-existent thing may act upon it by following the traces of nature in its actions. It is within our abilities to emulate some of the actions of nature, not all of them, because the gods have given this ability to human beings, but not in excess, as would lead them to be able to emulate nature in all of its actions, and they would cause things to grow like it does. Nay, they may only emulate some of its actions according to their abilities and understanding. We have been led by our study to the conclusion that there must be an origin which grows by itself, without any origin or seed at all that would precede it. We say that that plant growing by itself, from out of nothing, is the origin of all plants and the first plant. Its growing must by necessity be by one of two ways. Either its coming into being must be accidental through the action of nature, because everything acted upon must have something to act upon it. Thus, building necessitates a builder, and the object of action necessitates an actor. Or it may come to be through the creation of an eternal and potent creator, and this creator would then be the origin of that genus or species, which then may generate the likes of itself forever and without another similar creation, which made the first one appear and come into existence. This eternal creator has made it possible and permissible for some people to emulate his actions in theirs, and they have become potent to do what he has made possible and permissible for them. Through their arts and sagacity, and by following the traces of nature, they may thus be able to generate things similar to all plants, be they big or small. When we want to generate something similar, we must know the reason for it, the original generation, and the aim at the same as nature. We say that rain or water running on the earth moistens it. The rainwater, though, is more subtle than the water coming from the springs which gush forth from stone or something else. The rainwater becomes subtle through the heat which has touched it so that the vapors have risen upward until they have coagulated into clouds from which rain falls. That water, which has become subtle through heating, is more receptive to heat. Thus, also, when stagnant water has remained undisturbed for a long time, it will moisten the earth around it. When the earth becomes wet, it will conceal the wetness in its womb, and this wetness will water its soil. When this is affected by a mildly hot and wet air, and the sun heats it even more than the air, this causes putrefaction in the earth. When it putrefies, it will change, and when it changes, it will change into something else. This change into something else is the same as transformation. When it is transformed through putrefaction, nature, which is the generating faculty, will generate from the four primary qualities which are in the soil with the help of the two hot elements, air and the heat of the sun. On the two cold ones, water and earth, something like seeds coagulated from putridity through the transformation of the earthly particles, mixed with what we have just said, just like mushrooms become coagulated in the belly of the earth through the putrefaction of the moisture of rains, and similar things coagulate through transformation. There are many such cases, but it would take a long time to enumerate them all. On generating life. When people understood the manner of how nature works, they were able to follow its traces and do the same in the measure that it is possible for them and that it is theirs to do. Thus they generated many plants and called this action talidat. Others call this putrefaction, ta-finat, whilst yet others call it generation, takwinat. Each of the three, or some other designation of the same meaning, is permissible. They generated many kinds of plants, as we have already mentioned, and they also generated many kinds of animals in the same way as plants, because the process of generation was the same, and the two kinds of talid, of plants and animals, resemble each other. Yet, they did not claim that the plants and animals which they had generated were returned. If one of the ancients had claimed this, we would dispute his claim and deny it. It is not within human power to create something out of nothing, or to bring something out of non-existence into existence. Nay, these takwins and talids are cases where we add something to something else and put them together and let nature take care of the rest until it has its effect on them, the ingredients, and by this generation becomes complete. The real act in this is through the nature of the things to be generated. Our part in this is merely joining similars or dissimilars together and setting it in the same way as the act of nature sets it. We are not able and potent enough to do more than that. The ancients generated animals in the same way as plants. The magician, Ankabutha, even generated a man, and he described in his book on generation how he generated him and what he did so that he could complete the being of that man. He did admit, though, that what he generated was not a complete example of the species of man, and that it did not speak or understand. It had a complete outer form in all its limbs, yet it was like a perplexed and dazed man who neither spoke nor understood. This is because the generation of animals, and especially human beings from among animals, is much more difficult than the generation of plants, because the one who generates them, animals or men, must exert himself in an action which we only partially grasp, and the major part of which we do not understand. This is why we usually are not able to generate animals, and especially human beings, and we are not able to do with them what we can do with plants. Ankabutha acquired the recipe for generating a man from the Book of the Secrets of the Sun, in which Asclepius, the messenger of the sun, had mentioned how the sun had generated the generated man, who was not born according to the normal pattern. We have read this book and have found that passage in it, but we have been unable to do the same. However, Ankabutha was able to do that because of his excessive dexterity in talismanic and magical operations, because the way of generating is quite similar to the way of producing talismans and magical objects. Whosoever is able to make talismans may easily perform all kinds of talids and takwins. Ankabutha was able to generate a man, as we have already described. It was not able to understand or speak or eat, but it is said that he managed to keep it alive for 1 year. He attached to its body something that made it survive for 1 year, which it did. This, too, is something we are not able to perform, even though Ankabutha managed to do it because of his superb wisdom and his potency to perform what we cannot do. The point is in the art of making this generated man survive for a year. Yet, through this man, he taught us wonderful special properties, which he did, or which were generated from the man, and which the messenger of the sun had not mentioned separately in the Book of the Secrets of the Sun, like also other wonderful curiosities, although this is not the right place to mention them. He also mentioned that he generated a sheep which came out all white. Its state was the same as that of the artificial man, in that it did not make any sounds or cry, and it neither ate nor drank, but you could see it opening its eyes at times and closing them at others. He also mentioned the same about the man in the chapter on the closing and opening of the eyes. After him, Sabyatha desired to generate a man so that he could make use of the special property in him, but the king of his time prevented him from doing so, and said, "People benefit more from you making them talismans than from you wasting your time in something from which they do not get such benefit." Thus, Sabyatha stopped working on the artificial generation of a man, and busied himself with what the king had ordered. But I think that the king prevented him from doing this only as a matter of governing people, because this artificial man and other artificial animals had been used for deeds that had baffled and confused people. Perhaps that had even caused disturbances among them. This was why the king contrived to prevent Sabyatha from doing this. Now, we shall return to the generation of plants, which have wonderful actions, similar to those of generated animals, except that they are not quite like them. They are not merely a little below them, but much below them. The generation of all species of plants happens through burying in earth things from which plants will grow. Jan Bouchard turned his attention toward this, and he has helped us by teaching us many things about it, more than what Adam had mentioned in the Book of the Secrets of the Moon. Yet, the Book of Adam is the basis, because he was the first to open this branch of wisdom to people, and it was he who originally guided them. As far as we know, this did not happen before Adam to any human being, and no thinker had arrived at it through his thought, and no inventor had invented it by himself. Thus it was Adam who opened this branch of generating plants. Before him, the messenger of the sun had opened to the people the branch of generating animals, and people had done this successfully. I mean both kinds of Tawhid, that of animals and plants. But do not think that any of those who claim wisdom and sagacity have ever been able to do this on their own. It has never even crossed their minds. Not only this, but all kinds of actions with talismans and germination of trees and others is of our invention. Some nations may know something of this, but they have all taken it from us, and learned it from us, except for the Copts, who share with us a few things about talismans and magic, although their merit does not equal ours. They resemble it merely in some ways, but not in others. Translations from the Arabic by Haameen Antilla. Selections drawn from The Last Pagans of Iraq. Read by Dana Trell.